Okay, let's dive into this explainer, because today we are looking at something absolutely wild. What starts off as a completely normal, totally mundane conversation between two friends brilliantly spirals into this deep, reality-bending philosophical thought experiment. We're exploring a piece of dialogue titled The Eater, the Fetcher, and the Observer. Let's get right into it, because what starts as a simple chat about a summer snack turns into a fascinating inquiry into the very nature of human consciousness.
I want you to drop yourself right into this highly relatable, beautifully low-stakes premise. Picture this. You're sitting in a hot room. You're sweating. You have just absolutely devoured 2 ice creams, and honestly, despite all common sense, you are seriously craving a third. It's the absolute peak of summer lethargy. But in that lavey, overheated state, a really strange question pops into your head. A question that completely shatters the illusion of your own single identity. The question is simply this: who is actually eating your ice cream?
To understand exactly where this existential crisis begins, we have to look at the exact moment the narrator's mind starts to wander. The source material captures this beautifully. The narrator tells his friend, "I was sitting in my armchair today, more or less sweating. I had just devoured my second ice cream, and I was wondering whether I should treat myself to a third one." You can hear how slow and lethargic that is, right? But as he sits there, trapped between this craving for sugar and the sheer effort required to stand up, he notices something weird. He notices himself thinking about standing up.
Which brings us to Section 1, the ice cream dilemma, the paradox of the armchair.
So here's where the escalation happens. The narrator realizes that while one part of him is getting ready to physically stand up and go fetch that third ice cream, there is entirely another part of him that's simply sitting back, completely detached, just observing him do it. He says to his friend, "Look, there's someone sitting in the armchair, just ate 2 ice creams, thinking about getting a third one, and here's the thing, I'm observing him doing it." His friend is understandably pretty confused, asking, "Observing who?" And the narrator drops this line, "Exactly, that's the point. One person is observing another, which means there are at least 2 of my kind." It's bizarre, isn't it? Suddenly his consciousness is split right down the middle. There isn't just one guy on a chair anymore. There's the actor and there's the audience.
Let's move to Section 2, Action versus Observation. Who actually tastes the ice cream?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we figure out who is actually doing what. The friends decide they need to clearly define these 2 newly discovered selves. First, they identify the physical actor. Notice how clearly we can separate the body from the mind here. They define the fetcher, or the eater. This is purely the physical entity. This is the flesh and bone that gets up, walks to the freezer, retrieves the ice cream, and physically consumes it. But the friend rightly points out a massive flaw. If the fetcher is just a mindless physical machine executing a task, do they actually enjoy it?
And that leads them to define the second entity, the observer. So the crucial point here is that the observer is the mental entity that watches the action and registers the experience. The friends make a huge logical leap right here. They reason that if the observer is the one who finds out about the ice cream and registers the event of eating it, then the observer must actually be the one who enjoys the taste. The physical body just does the heavy lifting, but the detached mental observer gets all the actual pleasure.
And this brilliantly illustrates the divide they've created. On the left side, you have the external physical realm, fetching and eating. On the right side, you have the internal mental experience, observing and tasting. The external body does the labor, but the internal mind reaps the experiential reward. Literally, by just overthinking a trip to the freezer, our narrator has accidentally stumbled into the classic mind-body dualism that philosophers have debated for centuries.
Let's quickly jump to Section 3, Merging the Selves, the synthesis of the doer and the registerer.
Because, look, nobody wants to live life feeling like 2 completely separate people trapped in one body. So the friends urgently try to synthesize these entities back into one sane, functional person so the narrator doesn't feel like he's totally losing his mind to the summer heat. And they hit upon what feels like a brilliant temporary epiphany. They conclude, okay, there is only one person, but that person operates in 2 distinct modes. They can either do things or they can register things. As the friend explains it, there is someone who does something and someone who registers it. That could mean there's only one person after all, and that person can either do things or register things. The narrator is absolutely thrilled. He says, "You have no idea how grateful I am. I thought the heat had completely driven me insane. The roles are perfectly combined, crisis averted." Right?
Well, actually scratch that. Welcome to Section 4, the infinite regress, a logical collapse.
Just as the narrator feels the profound relief of being one whole person again, his friend realizes a fatal flaw in their brand new philosophical system. Let's move to and see how this builds step by terrible step. Step 1, you have the physical action of fetching the ice cream. Step 2, you have the mental action of registering the fetching. But wait a second, if registering is an action that a person does, then who is observing that action? That requires step 3, registering the registering. And if registering the registering is an action, you need a step 4 and a step 5, spiraling out forever into pure existential madness.
The friend drops the hammer with this quote right from the source. True, but the question now is, who is registering the registering, since that is also an action? Think about that for a second. Let that really sink in. The narrator responds simply, damn, then we really do have a problem. Their logical cure hasn't saved them at all. It has trapped them in an infinite loop of consciousness, watching itself watch itself forever.
Which brings us to our final section, sending the fetcher, grounding the absurdity.
So how do you escape an inescapable philosophical trap? You don't. You just have to walk away. To safely come back down from this sudden panic attack, the friends realize the only way out is to fully embrace the absurd. The narrator admits defeat. He says the heat has gotten to him too and asks his friend if he happens to have any ice cream. And his friend, entirely surrendering to the absolute absurdity of their conversation, replies with this deadpan comedic resolution. Of course, make yourself comfortable in the armchair, the ice cream will come right away. I'll send the fetcher immediately. He just accepts that they are fragmented beings of doers and observers and decides to just send his physical fetcher to go get the snacks. It's the perfect, hilarious grounding of a conversation that flew way too close to the sun.
Which leaves us here. Next time you get up from your armchair to grab a snack, or do literally any mundane task really, take a second to ask yourself, who is doing the acting and who is doing the observing? And more importantly, who exactly is registering your registering? Good luck figuring that one out. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope it gave your inner observers something fun to chew on.